Hello, my name is Sterling Simpson, and today I would like to talk to you about one of my favorite kind of music subgenres within the rock community known as grunge music. This music came out of the 90s, and it's kind of a little interesting way it came about. I'll just go ahead and show you real quick. These are some examples of grunge bands and some grunge albums that I really like. And this is an example of a band that kind of went out of style as the grunge movement exploded, and it probably wouldn't have had a very vast effect like it did if it wasn't for this album, which Rolling Stones magazine credited to be the #1 grunge album of all time. It is a great album from A to Z. Those of you who recognize this probably know it because of the song Smells Like Teen Spirit, which when it came out at the time just exploded and kind of changed the way that people thought about music. And there's this kind of hidden rivalry between Guns N' Roses. There's a very interesting story between Kurt Cobain and Axl Rose. They actually wanted to do a tour together, which is kind of unusual, hair metal and grunge is those kind of, people look at those now as two things that kind of rivaled, but Axl Rose was actually a very big fan of Kurt Cobain when he very first heard the music of Nirvana. In fact, you can find one Guns N' Roses music video in which he's wearing a Nirvana hat. But Kurt Cobain, that wasn't really his thing, and there was all this stuff that had kind of came out about Axl Rose being accused of misogyny and racism and all this other stuff. And the grunge movement, one big thing with it was that it kind of went against the grain with all of that. It was kind of it rebelled against that kind of 80s Motley Crue-esque girls type of music, and kind of was almost a throwback, not within the context of which it sounded, but as lyrically, it was kind of a throwback to the 60s kind of introspective side of music and wanting to make these big elaborate albums that were just great. I'm going to take a second to talk about one of my favorite albums from this time period, which is Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness by the Smashing Pumpkins. It is a double album, and I would make the argument that it is the best album from this time period. A double album's really kind of hard to make. Anyone that plays music kind of knows, after a while of just recording stuff, it gets hard to pump out that much music. But I mean, this album, it is 14 songs on one side and 14 on the other, and it really doesn't slow down. It's really a good album. It has 1979 on it. That's what most people would probably know it as, and it's just a great listen. One of my personal favorites. One part of grunge, or an aspect of it rather, that I always found interesting was that some people might argue that music is all down into kind of the notes and how many you can hit and how fast you can go and certain aspects like that. As you can see right here, kind of Eddie Van Halen. Now, one might argue that that is, just the pinnacle of music, and I have a lot of respect for Eddie Van Halen, and I would never say anything negative about the man, nor would I try and argue with a guitarist about how Kurt Cobain is a better guitarist. But I think when it comes down to the songs, Smells Like Teen Spirit, all it is bar chords. How iconic is that, Everyone has heard that riff. It's such an iconic riff, and I mean, it's so important that it killed another subset of rock music that some people argue was the pinnacle of rock music. Now, I've always found that 90s music was more superior to that than of the hair metal music. But I think my time's about up, and I hope I interested you with my facts about the grunge scene.